Hey everybody, welcome back to the Amateur Hour Sports Podcast. My name is Jacob. I got Deshaun with me yet again for this episode. We were kind of talking about this a bit earlier today. We decided just to record on the matter. Last week we talked about if the Toronto Raptors could ever win another NBA championship in our lifetime. And basically a lot of that argument was down to the marketability of Toronto. And we were discussing today the prospect of an NFL team coming to Toronto and how that would look if that team would be successful. And Deshaun, I want to get your first thoughts on how you think an NFL team would do in Toronto.
Well, I mean, I don't see it personally happening. I just think the NFL's kind of like at its max when it comes to expanding. I don't think the NFL is a very expensive league. They're already 32 teams deep.
What about relocation though?
Which team do you see getting relocated? I don't see any team getting relocated.
The Los Angeles Chargers can barely sell out. What is it? It used to be called the StubHub Center. I forget what the name of the stadium is now, but that's literally an MLS stadium they can't sell out.
No, I agree with you with that team, but I don't think that team would go to Canada out of everywhere. They've tried St. Louis for that team. I don't think when it comes to Toronto, we already have a Canadian football team, and mind you, CFL is a garbage league, obviously compared. It's a
nobody cares about the CFL, and you know what? If you do care about the CFL, I am not sorry.
Yeah,
people in Toronto don't care about the CFL. There's so many other sports to watch there's not enough in CFL. You go to Ottawa, you go to Saskatchewan, big deal. CFL's a big deal, but it's just not here.
So we can't support our own football league teams to the capacity of 20,000. Obviously, NFL team that have to go play at a big stadium like Rogers Center, and I just don't see them selling out 50,000 to the point where the team is at the value where it needs to be. Because the cheapest NFL team right now is $1.8 billion, mind you, and excuse me, I don't see I don't see that in Toronto. I don't see them having an NFL team, and that's kind of where we're going. I don't think it'll ever develop as Toronto as a possible location. I don't see any expansion, to be honest with you. In the NFL.
I disagree. I see a potential for. I see relocation more likely than I see expansion, because you're right. The NFL in terms of how the league is set up is pretty well rounded with 4 teams a division to 4 divisions per conference. That makes sense, but there are teams that do struggle marketing wise, and the Los Angeles Chargers, like I said, were one of them. They were playing in the LA Galaxy's home stadium. I used to be called the StubHub Center. I forget the name, but struggling to fill out that for a team that already has, for a city that already has an NFL team, the Los Angeles Rams. And there have been a lot of question marks about the fan support for both Los Angeles football teams, not just the Chargers. So the fact that the Chargers are struggling even more than the Rams is a big deal. But anyways, I think I can really see an NFL franchise coming to Toronto based off of the marketability available in Toronto, because you'd have a whole country kind of rooting for that team. That's I was talking about how the Raptors are going to have success with that in the future. We see, the Leafs are the most valuable NHL franchise. So there's definitely there are positive things to look at when considering expansion for the NFL into Toronto. And I see it happening within the next 30 to 50 years, maybe even in the next 20 years. But I see it happening. I can see where you may not think so. I can definitely see it happening because the Argonauts are quite irrelevant for Torontonians. So I think it's a very distinct possibility we get an NFL franchise. Now the next question is, do I think that team will have success in Toronto? And well, if looking at it right now, they'd probably be playing at the Rogers Center. So you'd have to sell what, like 50,000 tickets per
It has
game?
to be sold out every game.
Like yeah, NFL teams sell out. Like the NFL is the biggest sports league in the U.S.
Yeah.
In terms of viewership, like the Super Bowl is only beaten by, I think, the World Cup final for viewership, and I think it's quite close if I'm not mistaken. So, based off of that, you need to have people at your games, and I think that Toronto has proven that they will go to these games because the Jays, when they're good, sell out that Rogers Center. And I know that I know I just said that when they're good, but baseball is not as popular as the NFL, and baseball is also declining in popularity. But the NFL is staying popular. Baseball is statistically declining in popularity. You guys can't see the look Deshaun just shot me because he's a baseball fan.
That looks because I don't think we do well in the NFL in Canada. We've had the Buffalo Bills do their one game in Canada. They've done that. They did it for I think 5 or 6 years, and we could not, on top of not filling up the stadium, but when the team wasn't very good, no one was going to the games.
That's different though. That's a Buffalo team. That's not.
But that was for the purpose of getting the Canadian viewership involved in watching the game, and that's kind of what we showed the NFL. And because of that example, I just don't think they're like, oh, like let's go put a team in Toronto, especially when you start off a team, their team's not going to be very good, especially in football. Like it can take you a while before you are a good team, depending on how you draft and that type of thing, and they just aren't going to have players they're going to want to sign.
You're right. You're right. In terms of the quality of the team, I didn't get to that. You're right. I think the team would struggle. I think fans, you could figure out a way to get 50,000 fans to show up to that game. But when you talk about the quality of the team, you're right. It would be very hard for a long time to be able to attract big name players to come play in Toronto. That would be a problem, 100%.
So yeah, when it comes to it, like I think because they're going to struggle in that aspect of just generating the value in showing a football product, I just don't see it coming to Toronto. I just think that they're this it's like the National Football League is just an Americans game. Like, I think that's just the league. I think they're going to look at it and be like, you guys have the CFL and you already don't do, well with the CFL up there. They just won't see, like they've tried. They've had the Bills come play here and it didn't do, like they're like literally like, yeah, like we'd rather play in Buffalo because we make more money playing in Buffalo. Like Canada doesn't do anything for us. And the Bills were bad. Like the Bills were not a good team when they were coming up here. And it's one of those things, like if you can't support a team when they're doing poorly, like in the NFL, the Miami Dolphins, they're garbage, but they still and that's a 80 to 90,000 seats, in that stadium, and they do pretty well filling out the stadium. And we are at 50,000. I don't see us even touching 50,000 if we have a bad team, because we weren't able to do it for the Buffalo Bills. And that's the opportunity we were presented. Like, if we did really well when the Buffalo Bills were here, like, in terms of supporting them, I think you have the opportunity to then talk about a team coming up here, because we always represent, we always show out, and I don't think that we have done a great job with that. So I don't think that a team, one, would last here, and I don't think they'd even waste their time putting a $2 billion team up here in the first place.
Well, I think this argument is kind of... If there were to be talks about an NFL team coming to Toronto and people would be talking about, there's no market for that in Toronto, it'd be a little bit of deja vu, talking about the Toronto Raptors and what they had to go through to get a franchise in Toronto. So the Raptors have proven that there can be support for basketball in Toronto, and we disagree on this, but I think that the future of the Toronto Raptors is very positive in terms of their marketability. But you don't necessarily agree on that front, but that's not the point of this topic I'm bringing up here, because there definitely is a market for football in Toronto. I think they'd be able to sell out the stadium because there's a ton of football fans in Ontario, in Canada, in the GTA, where people are going to be going to games. And with that, you'd also get fans for local U.S. teams. Like, if Buffalo were playing in Toronto, you'd probably have Bills fans coming to Toronto to watch games, or Jets fans, because you look at baseball, there's a ton of Yankees fans, ton of Red Sox fans who are always at away games when they're playing in Toronto. That kind of deal. So I don't think that the stadium is going to be the problem. I think that the quality of the product of the team, that is going to be a bit of a problem. I can see it being very difficult to make a competitive franchise in the NFL in Toronto.
Out of how many Buffalo Bills games have you been to outside the one that you were at recently?
I've been to 2 total.
2 total.
Including that one.
So you've been to 2 total, minus the one that you just went to, but you've been to 1 basically in 20 years of existence, and the Bills being right there, 90 minutes away. Mm-hmm. So why is that? Well,
for me, football is...
Because you said football is highly marketable. These are guys that have come and played in Canada, in Toronto, like you just said. They did that for an X amount of years, and...
football is my 4th. I'm thinking in terms of maybe 4. I'm probably 4th most interested in NFL. Maybe 3rd. That coming on this year. But I'm predominantly soccer, basketball, hockey. So if the potential to go to huge games like that was there, I mean, I've only ever been to 2 Maple Leafs games in my life, and I live 20 minutes away from Toronto.
That's different,
right? But I haven't been to a ton of games. That doesn't mean I'm not a fan of the league. And that's me. This is me. I'm not as big on football as I am on this other stuff. And I haven't even been to a lot of these games. It's very difficult to attain tickets to these sort of games.
What I'm trying to make with this point is I'm trying to say that you have you're talking about us filling a stadium. You have a sporting event that's 90 minutes away, realistically, on the highway, just crossing the border, 9 minutes away. You were able to go to, and I've never been to a Buffalo Bills game, and I never will go to a Buffalo Bills game.
Well, you're not a Bills fan.
But it's outside of the Bills fan. It's just when it comes to the NFL, they could be playing the Dallas Cowboys for the Super Bowl, and I will not go there.
That's a lie.
And I promise you that. Like, I will not go there.
Why?
Because I don't want to be there. Like, it's just NFL games are a different thing, and I don't think Canadians understand, like, we are used to watching the NFL in our basements, in our living rooms, with our friends, with our family, because it's a different thing for us to watch these NFL games. They're not something that we're like, oh, like, I can't wait to have an NFL team. So when we talk about the NBA expanding
I don't get this argument.
Canada,
why do you think that Canadians are not entertained by NFL games live?
Because they're not.
What do you mean they aren't?
Look, the CFL, for example, will take up a whole bunch of the Canadian viewership on football, because why would they support another league coming into their country when they already have their own league?
That globally, not globally, on a national
nationwide
scale,
exactly.
Yes, that's a good point. You're right. That is a problem. Getting people from Saskatchewan, getting people from BC to buy into a Toronto football team when they already have the BC Lions, they already have the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Yes,
it will not happen.
That you're right.
But
that's a good point.
So it will not happen. And
but Toronto is the Argonauts are absolutely no competition for an NFL franchise.
Us as Torontonians and everyone that lives in the GTA, the southern of Ontario, we just wouldn't support an NFL team because we don't support the team that came over here and tried to show for us. We didn't support them.
Because we're not Bills fans.
But it doesn't matter. That's the closest.
There are very limited amounts of Bills fans in Southern Ontario. Do you know anybody who's a Bills fan?
Yes, I do.
It's a limited amount of people.
No, I 100% agree with you. But my point is that usually if you live within 90 minutes of somewhere and that's the only team that you are able to be a fan of, that's the team that you will be a fan of.
But you're not, because nobody is a Bills fan in Southern Ontario. There's a limited amount of Bills fans. If the team was playing in Toronto, the people of Toronto who want to be NFL fans would be inclined to being Toronto NFL fans.
No, because
and would be much more inclined to go to those
games. The people who
are
NFL fans would be Buffalo fans, and they already are Buffalo fans. The people who are NFL fans, like you or myself, pick other teams outside of the closest teams to Ontario, which would be Chicago, which would be Detroit, which would be Buffalo, which would, like, there are other teams that are closer to us, but we pick other teams / Steelers, Seahawks. Why do you think we pick other teams that are super far away and not the teams that are closest to us?
Because Buffalo's a bad market to support a team. Buffalo haven't won a playoff game in 24 years when they lost 4 straight Super Bowls. That's not an easy team to root for. Also, have you been to Buffalo? That's not a pleasant city to visit.
It's not.
So Toronto, much nicer city to visit, and we know Toronto has this problem. But Buffalo, my fucking god, I was there a couple weeks ago.
Buffalo's bad.
I hate Buffalo. I don't want to ever have to go there. Okay, so. Don't give me that, people don't want to go to Buffalo because they don't want to watch the Bills. We're not Bills fans here. But if you are a Toronto fan and a Toronto sports fan and you like the NFL, you would definitely be inclined to watching a Toronto. And you're a Cowboys fan. The Cowboys came to play in Toronto. You would go to that game.
I would not go to that game.
You would not?
I would not go to that game. I would not go to that game. I would rather watch the game on my TV because that's how I've done it every single Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Saturday, whatever day it may be. That's how I've always done it for my entire life, is watch the Cowboys on
But
TV.
you've been watching the Raptors and the Leafs for all this time. You still go to one of those games, even though you're used to watching on TV.
But how many games do I go to a year? 1 or 2 for the Raptors? I've been to 1 total.
Because it's expensive.
But it's not. You don't think NFL games are expensive?
Yeah, it's going to be
But you're talking about supporting a team at... You don't think NFL game, like the Leafs, it's different because
the Leafs are impossibly expensive. They sell out every single game
because the Leafs have the history. They have corporate, like it's not the same when you're talking about a brand new team trying to garner that interest. It's just not going to happen. And that's why they've had the opportunity to bring different types of sports teams when they talk about expansion. Another sports team in Toronto, and they don't think the market could deal with another sports team because. We are a hockey town first, and then we now are a basketball town second. So
yeah, but you're recycling the argument for when the Raptors were created. Oh, we're a hockey town. Nobody's ever gonna support a basketball team. Look at this. Look
how long. But I'm saying, look how long it took. It literally took a championship to now have people back the Raptors as a proper organization, and when you look at it, I just don't think the marketplace is there because how long have the Argos have literally been in Toronto for 100+ years and people don't care. They could care less.
The CFL is not marketed well enough. There's not enough interest in the CFL.
But it's your own.
NFL
it's your
is the
own
biggest
league
in North America.
Own league. The NFL doesn't care for Canada when it comes down to it.
Look, there are plenty. Like if you want to talk about a competition between a North American league as opposed to a Canadian league, you can look at soccer. TFC have a very successful team in MLS. There's also York 9 and Forge who play in Hamilton in the CPL. Those teams don't get nearly as much support as TFC because that league is not on the scale of the North American based league.
It's not. But like we're talking about that's apples and oranges because NFL games, at least 55,000 people have to be in your stadium.
But the Chargers don't get that. The Chargers don't have that.
Listen, the Chargers don't have a strong fan base, but their stadiums are full. Like they'll be full of the other fans, mind you, but their stadiums are full.
No.
Yes.
The Chargers don't sell out.
Their stadiums are full and
the Chargers do not sell out the stadium. The Chargers have very significant problems marketing that team. Especially after the creation of 2 teams.
I don't know why they put 2 teams in LA, but I'm just saying, like...
The Chargers struggle.
Do you think the Chargers would do better if they were in Toronto than in LA?
If
you can look me in my face and say that...
From a fan base standpoint, 100%. Because there are 2 teams in Los Angeles, and the Chargers are clearly the inferior of those 2 teams.
You think they make more money if they were in Toronto than if they're in LA? Because I don't. I don't think that you can't market a Toronto team better than you can market an LA team.
I completely disagree. There are 2 teams in Los Angeles. The Chargers do not sell out a relatively small stadium. They can't sell out an MLS stadium. Like 30,000 strong, they can't get that to show up. So I definitely think that a relocation from the Chargers to Toronto would have more success. Do I think that that can happen right now? No, I don't. But if we go like decades down the line, I do think that this should be a legitimate thing for the NFL to consider.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think, like, really, I think it'd be a cool idea to have a Toronto-based National Football League team. I just don't think it'll ever happen. I don't think we have the markets to support an NFL team. I think what you talk about is you have to talk about 55,000 interchanging fans in the building paying, US dollar for their tickets. They're not really, like, on the affordable side, like, it's very hard to market an NFL team when you are in Canada. I don't think the Canadian viewership would support an NFL team being here. Like, if you show games on these channels, people aren't really going to watch it because they have their own football leagues to be watched. And I think the NFL, the most important times in the NFL are along, the NHL and NBA season. And I just think that other Canadians are going to be more inclined to watch their hockey team play or to watch the Raptors play. I just don't think they will pull the type of views that they'll need to be a successful franchise up here in Canada.
We'll end the episode there. Thank you to Sean for being part of this episode. Clear that this is another topic that we're never going to be able to come to a consensus on, but thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at AmateurPDC. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow on Spotify. We post every single day, so come back tomorrow for another episode.